As the day wore on, Jeannine Gillis, a survivor in this post-apocalyptic world, finally stirred from her slumber. The clock displayed a shocking 5:30 p.m. as she hastily tended to her bandage and made her way downstairs. With a quick meal of leftover ham, she replenished her energy and took stock of her supplies. Knowing the importance of preserving what she had, Jeannine packed her backpack with the remaining food, leaving behind her blood-stained jacket, some twigs, and pine cones to lighten her load. The kitchen floor became a makeshift resting place for these discarded items. Emerging through the door, she entered a landscape marred by charred trees, a grim reminder of the fire that had ravaged her home. Undeterred, Jeannine braved the desolate terrain in search of essentials. In the darkness, her squinting eyes strained to discern any useful items nearby. Nervously, she scoured the vicinity, aware of the ever-present threat lurking in the shadows. Each time she found something of value, she deposited it in a pile near the cooler she had left in the burned grass. This routine brought a sense of accomplishment, as her ability to distinguish between valuable items from worthless ones improved with each discovery. Throughout the night, Jeannine continued her relentless search, unearthing familiar objects, rocks, pine cones, twigs, branches, a meager but crucial assortment for her survival. A stroke of luck presented her with an old newspaper, a glimpse into a world that had crumbled beneath the weight of the zombie apocalypse. The frigid cold gnawed at her. Despite the new jacket she had stumbled upon earlier, determination fueled her onward, braving the biting wind as she persisted in gathering whatever she could find. Her loot grew, dropping onto the ever-growing pile, a testament to her resilience and resourcefulness. Jeannine Gillis, a survivor in a world overrun by the undead, persevered against all odds, for in her heart, the flicker of hope refused to be extinguished. As the day progressed, the fire pit lay dormant, a mere ring of stones patiently awaiting its fiery resurrection. Jeannine, ever mindful of the impending darkness, gathered the twigs and pine cones she had collected, depositing them meticulously within the stone enclosure. Each piece of kindling was carefully placed, a testament to her unwavering determination to survive. Turning her attention back to the farmhouse, she secured the remaining supplies with a sense of purpose. A sturdy spear, crafted from a resilient tree branch, stood as a stalwart guardian against the encroaching dangers that plagued her world. She also had discovered in some abandoned shack far to the south a newly acquired water bottle shimmering with promise, a vessel ready to be filled with life-sustaining liquid. Anticipation swelled within Jeannine's heart as she glanced towards the unlit fire pit, envisioning the comforting glow and crackling warmth it would soon provide. It stood as a beacon of solace, a refuge from the encroaching night and the horrors that prowled under the cover of darkness. With her preparations complete, Jeannine took a moment to reflect on her journey. She had endured countless trials and tribulations, yet her spirit remained unyielding. She was a survivor in this desolate world, where hope flickered like a fragile flame amidst the encroaching shadows. With a determined grimace, Jeannine took it upon herself to clear the farmhouse of its grim inhabitants. One of the undead, limp and lifeless, was hauled away from the sanctuary, her muscles straining under its weight. She deposited the zombie a short distance from the farmhouse, unceremoniously dumping it onto the unforgiving ground. The act brought a small victory in this never-ending battle for survival. Returning to her mission, Jeannine embarked on another foraging run. Her keen eyes caught sight of a sturdy log, its potential as fuel for the fire pit evident. Swiftly, she transported the precious find back to the waiting ring of stones, ensuring that the flames would have ample nourishment when the time came. Scanning the trees behind the farm, Jeannine continued her search, finding a familiar array of scattered items upon the forest floor. Amidst her exploration, a small clearing came into view, dotted with hay bales. Her senses heightened as she noticed a pair of zombies in the distance. Fortunately, they remained oblivious to her presence, allowing her to retreat into the comforting embrace of the forest. Dealing with the undead would have to wait. For now, her focus shifted to the persistent gnaw of hunger in her belly. Amidst her quest for sustenance, Jeannine stumbled upon a patch of berries resembling the ones that had previously caused her discomfort. A hunger-driven curiosity took hold, and without hesitation, she greedily devoured one of the suspect berries, conducting an impromptu experiment. Her search along the fence line and the perimeter of the cornfield yielded the usual assortment of scattered debris, fatigue setting in with each passing step. As she neared her stockpile near the farm, Thirst parched her throat, prompting her to retrieve the full water bottle from her backpack. In a moment of carelessness, she spied a remaining and potentially noxious berry nestled among her belongings and, driven by an impulsive decision, stuffed it into her mouth. The effects were swift and punishing. Almost immediately, her stomach churned with agony, a stark reminder of the berry's toxic nature. Feeling the queasiness consume her, Jeannine hastily discarded the gathered items into the growing pile and replenished the fire pit with more fuel. A sense of urgency propelled her inside the farmhouse and up the stairs to seek solace in a bedroom. Rest was the only refuge for now, and she surrendered to the oblivion of sleep, hoping for relief from her ailing stomach. The night stretched on, unforgiving and silent, until the hour hand reached 2 a.m., rousing Jeannine from her slumber. Emerging from the bed, darkness shrouding her movements, Jeannine felt a newfound vitality coursing through her veins. The troubled storm within her stomach had subsided, replaced by a renewed vigor. Descending the stairs, she gathered her thoughts, formulating plans for the challenges that lay ahead in the coming day. Jeannine Gillis, a survivor scarred by the horrors of a decaying world, refused to succumb to the darkness that enveloped her. In the face of adversity, she found strength, a beacon of resilience that flickered within her soul. With a glimmer of hope guiding her steps, Jeannine ventured forth into the unknown, ready to confront whatever the post-apocalyptic landscape would throw her way. In the enveloping darkness, Jeannine's options were limited, constrained by the veil of night that cloaked the farm. With little to occupy her time, she meandered around the vicinity, her senses attuned to the search for any useful items within reach. But she knew that the true exploration would have to wait for dawn, for the sun to cast its guiding light upon her path. Driven by a ravenous hunger and an overwhelming sense of tedium, Jeannine gathered the canned foods from the scattered pile, hoarding them within the confines of the cooler. Carrying her newfound treasures back inside the farmhouse, she found solace in the knowledge that the fiery threat that once loomed over her was now a fading memory. Her thoughts lingered on the group of zombies she had spotted in the clearing to the north of the farmhouse, their presence haunting her mind. With the imminent sunrise, Jeannine understood the importance of striking while she possessed the advantage of surprise. Stealthily, she embarked on her mission, approaching the vicinity of the undead with caution. One by one, she drew them in, dispatching the slow and lumbering threats with a deftness honed by survival. In the aftermath of her triumph, Jeannine rifled through the defeated corpses, uncovering a package of strawberry seeds and a pair of warm, comforting socks. Undeterred, she pressed forward, vanquishing zombie after zombie, salvaging anything of value from their lifeless husks. Ahead, a garage and a small cabin beckoned, promising potential riches in the form of much-needed supplies. Her determination unwavering, she surged onward, undeterred by the presence of the undead. As Jeannine entered the garage, hope flickered momentarily, only to be extinguished by barren cabinets that offered nothing of use. Undeterred, she approached the small cabin with utmost caution, scanning the surroundings for any lurking danger. Inside, she found a mere 4 cans of food, devoid of a coveted can opener. She departed the humble abode, leaving behind 2 additional corpses that had met their demise beneath her boot. Her sights remained fixed on the path ahead as she made her way back to the farmhouse that had become her sanctuary. Foraging on her return journey, Jeannine found herself encountering the usual assortment of mundane items, devoid of any significance. Arriving back at the farmhouse, she fell into the familiar routine, adding sticks to the fire, meticulously sorting through her amassed loot piles, and then once again, she embarked on another expedition into the surrounding area, driven by the relentless demands of her empty stomach. Her repetitive actions became mechanical, her movements devoid of enthusiasm. Monotony encroached upon her spirit, but the persistent hunger overshadowed any discontent. The only rest from her perpetual search came in the form of the toxic berries, of which she convinced herself to consume just one, hopeful that a single berry wouldn't bring about illness. She ingested it, temporarily quelling the emptiness within. Jeannine continued to forage and gather, her actions resembling that of an automaton. Yet, before long, the uneasy churning in her stomach confirmed that one berry was indeed enough to induce nausea. As darkness descended upon the farmhouse, she carried out her usual routine with mechanical precision, sorting through her gathered supplies before ascending the stairs past midnight, succumbing once more to the embrace of slumber. In this desolate world, Jeannine Gillis clung to her unwavering routine, a cycle of gathering and sorting, a relentless pursuit for survival. The monotony threatened to consume her. As the new day dawned, Jeannine once again set out on her relentless search for berries, her hunger a constant companion. She ventured beyond the abandoned shacks to the south, delving deeper into the forest. Suddenly, a rustling in the trees startled her, and a zombie lunged towards her. Reacting swiftly, she forced it to the ground and crushed its skull with practiced efficiency. Another undead assailant met a similar fate, but the encounter left her shaken, a tinge of fear coursing through her veins. Undeterred, she pressed on, navigating through the dense foliage until she reached a vast clearing. In the distance, a multitude of shambling undead stood aimlessly, oblivious to their surroundings. Jeannine employed the same strategy as before, drawing them in one by one or in small groups, swiftly eliminating them in isolated skirmishes. The method served her well, allowing her to conserve precious energy in the absence of substantial sustenance. Among the defeated zombies, she discovered a pair of fingerless gloves and a protective riding helmet, but little else of note. As she ventured deeper into the clearing, she encountered numerous clusters of zombies. Continuing her methodical approach, she engaged them, dispatching each one with calculated precision. However, her trusty spear met its demise in the midst of combat, its shaft shattering under the strain. Discarding the broken weapon, she filled her mouth with berries before deciding it was time to retreat towards the farm. At least a dozen undead corpses now littered the clearing near the tree line where she had emerged, a testament to a day's arduous work. Foraging on her way back to the farm, Jeannine collected various items, sorting them into their respective places upon her return. And once again, she embarked on a final foray into the surrounding area before nightfall, the routine now ingrained within her being. In the darkened living room of the farmhouse, Jeannine sat, consuming the berries she knew wouldn't bring illness. Desperation tinged her actions as she tried to ingest enough calories to sustain herself, but deep down, she knew that even though she had always been a light eater, it wouldn't be enough. The threat of starvation loomed large, accompanied by the gnawing realization that her infected leg wound, a wound she had no means to treat, coupled with the absence of a can opener. The supplies she had gathered thus far, though valuable, would not be sufficient. One thing remained clear: she had to push forward, even as exhaustion threatened to consume her. Sleep eluded Jeannine that night, her mind plagued by worry. The weight of her circumstances pressed heavily upon her, the uncertainties of the future lurking in the shadows. Weary and restless, Jeannine crawled out of bed at 3 a.m., the darkness enveloping her. Determined to keep herself occupied until dawn, she embarked on a mission to find tasks around the farm. Tidying up and rummaging through the cabinets and shelves filled her time, though with each passing day, it seemed there was less left to discover. In the absence of a television, an old radio took its place upon a table in the farmhouse's living area. She stared at it intently, the faint sound of static emanating from its speakers. Months had passed since the media went silent shortly after the initial Knox event. The radio held only 2 preset stations, neither of which offered any semblance of emergency services broadcasts. Jeannine had left the radio on day and night, hoping for any sign of human connection, but its speakers were now growing weaker. In an effort to conserve what little battery power remained, she made the decision to turn it off. Consuming a handful of berries, she stepped out into the morning light, eager to seek out more bushes that would provide her sustenance. However, as soon as she entered the tree line, an undead creature lunged at her from behind a tree, nearly catching her off guard. Reacting swiftly, she pushed it to the ground, relentlessly striking until it lay lifeless at her feet. The encounter left her contemplating the lurking dangers within the woods, wondering how many more undead could be hiding, patiently awaiting their moment to strike. Proceeding cautiously, she continued her search through the trees, a sense of unease gripping her. A short while later, another zombie attempted the same surprise attack, met with the same swift defeat. The situation was growing increasingly perilous, and Jeannine felt her unease intensifying. Later in the afternoon, near the barn, she encountered another lone lurker. After dispatching the zombie, she tore its clothing into rags, adding them to the growing collection of useful items she had gathered continued throughout the morning. Despite the challenges, the farm provided a brief moment of solace, a place where she could feel relatively safe. However, the solace proved fleeting, and after a brief rest, she set out again to scavenge for berries, knowing that without a can opener, the canned goods she possessed would be of little help. The search had to continue, her survival depending on it. The evening wore on, and Jeannine persisted in her relentless search, the darkness enveloping the landscape she had grown familiar with. As she made her rounds, she noticed something different near the barn. Faint growls reached her ears, signaling the presence of a lurking undead creature. Approaching cautiously, she coaxed the creature closer before shoving it over a fence. However, as it clambered back over, it lunged at her feet, its claws meeting the resistance of the sturdy boots she had acquired from the undead hiker. Another zombie spilled out of the barn's window, a place she had already cleared out days ago. Walking back to the old farmhouse, worry crept into her thoughts. What would she do if a large group stumbled upon her hideaway? While she had become proficient at dispatching 1 or 2 monsters, the prospect of facing 10 or 20 attacking in unison left her confidence wavering. The relentless onslaught of the undead became increasingly apparent, and unless she actively sought them out, it was only a matter of time before they overwhelmed her. Turning on the radio once more, she desperately hoped for any sign of life, but the speakers remained silent. A profound sense of loneliness and desolation washed over her as she felt utterly miserable. Nearly midnight, she ascended the stairs to her bed, preparing for much-needed sleep. Just as she was about to crawl beneath the covers, a gunshot shattered the darkness. The sound hinted at the presence of another survivor, but Jeannine knew the slim chances of finding them. What she was certain of, however, was that the loud noise would draw more undead creatures to its location. She lay down, succumbing to exhaustion, and slept. The next morning, Jeannine resumed her routine. She attended to her leg wound, changing the bandage, and consumed a handful of berries to stave off hunger. Searching around the farm became a daily ritual, with the hope of finding useful scraps or, ideally, more berries. She remained alert, constantly scanning her surroundings for signs of danger. The hypervigilance drained her energy, compounded by the weight of the bag on her back and the festering infection in her leg. It all felt overwhelming, and she questioned how much longer she could endure this grueling process. Lost in her thoughts, she suddenly snapped back to reality, detecting rustling in the bushes nearby. An undead creature had managed to creep close, hidden by the trees while her mind wandered. Swiftly eliminating the threat, Jeannine resolved to remain even more vigilant, knowing the cost of complacency. She continued her search through the forest, honing her ability to discern the useful from the useless. As hours passed and dawn approached, she made her way back to the farm, relieving her weary shoulders of the burden of the items she had discovered. She turned on the radio once again, staring blankly at it as it emitted nothing but static. If only she could receive a sign that someone else was out there, that she wasn't alone. Disappointed, she switched it off, preserving the battery for another day. Heading out the back door, she prepared for her second scavenging run of the day. She had only ventured a short distance into the trees when she halted, reaching into her backpack for a handful of berries. Then she heard it. A faint chopping sound of helicopter blades. Dropping the berries, she sprinted back towards the farmhouse, the pain in her leg searing as she aggravated the wound in her haste. Hurrying inside and up the stairs, memories of the last time she saw a helicopter after the Knox event flooded her mind. She recalled peering from her home as a helicopter spotted a survivor a block and a half away, circling overhead and inadvertently attracting a massive horde of zombies. Helpless to assist, she watched in horror as the horde broke into her former neighbor's home. Hours later, her neighbor emerged, having become one of the zombies themselves. As Jeannine rebandaged the deep wound on her leg and nervously glanced out the upstairs window, she noticed the whirring of the helicopter blades had ceased. Cautiously, she descended the stairs. Perhaps it hadn't spotted her, but as she neared the bottom, the sound of zombies outside and the resumption of the helicopter's whirring shattered her hopes. It must have seen her, she concluded. A zombie began relentlessly pounding on a door downstairs, trapping her within. Feeling utterly cornered, Jeannine quickly gathered whatever items she could fit into her hiking bag and retreated back upstairs to find a hiding spot. Peering out of the upstairs windows, she observed a couple of the zombies lurking in the yard, surrounding the farm. After a while, the helicopter flew away, seemingly giving up on its pursuit. However, the ceaseless pounding on the door persisted. Carefully, she descended the stairs again to assess the situation. But as she did, another zombie managed to enter the house through an open window. She rushed into the room to shut the window, but another crawled through. As she stomped on its head, yet another came through the window. Overwhelmed, she backed away, realizing that at least 10 more were lumbering directly toward the farm, their lifeless eyes fixated on her. Fear and panic gripped her as she contemplated her next move. Her heart pounded in her chest as she weighed her options, knowing that her very survival hinged on making the right decision in this dire moment.